Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Madhya Pradesh Cabinet Note for Anti-Conversion Bill. We have the Madhya Pradesh Cabinet which has recently approved the Madhya Pradesh Freedom of Religion Bill of 2020. What will it do? It will replace the Madhya Pradesh Religious Freedom Act of 1968. What are the provisions of this particular bill? The bill basically intends to prevent any conversion, prohibit religious conversions by using number of ways of converting one person into another. What are the basic characteristics? Let's say for example, if there is mispresentation, or let's say for example, allurement. What is this allurement? Let me explain this for you. Let's say for example, there are two religions. One is X religion, the other is a Y religion. There is a person from religion X who is practicing his own religion. Now there is an individual from religion Y who comes up to this particular person, asks this particular person X to convert into religion Y. That is by allurement. What are these allurements? Let's say for example, this person Y gives some gratifications, or let's say he gives some gifts, or let's say he gives some money, or let's say for example, he promises that if he converts to the religion Y, he would be provided employment opportunities or free education from one of the reputed schools and colleges, or easy money and better lifestyle. So what does it mean? It means that this person from religion Y is alluring this person from another religion X. So the allurement is basically can be in cash, or it can be in kind as well. It can be an employment opportunity, or it can be an educational purpose as well. If this particular person is luring another person from a different religion, that is what is called as allurement. There can be also a provision of threat, undue influence as well. What is this undue influence? Let's say for example, I am a person who is holding one of the designated positions in one of the company. It can be government or it can be private, or I might also hold one of the respective positions in the society as well. In case I go and ask another person from a different religion to convert to my religion, that is what is called as undue influence. So what is undue influence here? I'm using my position to attract or pull another person, because if that person does not convert, I can sanction, or I can prevent that person from raising up in his ladder. So this is what is called as undue influence. Then we also have something called as coercion. So what is coercion? Let's say for example, there is a person who is practicing his own religion. Now I am forcing him against his own will, that which is not voluntary in nature. This can be physical force, or it can be psychological force as well. So coercion basically means forcing a person who is not ready to convert without his voluntary action. Why? Because there is another person who is forcing this person. Either it can be physical threat, or it can also be psychological or emotional threat as well. That is what is called as coercion. Another important characteristic is about marriage. Let's say for example, there is a woman, there is a man from a different community. So this man is asking the woman to convert to his religion. Why? Because he is intending her to marry. That is where this particular law says it will become null and void if the woman is forced to convert to another religion, that which is being practiced by a man. That is to do with marriage. And in case there is any other fraudulent means to convert a person from one religion to another, such people will be facing punishment, says this particular legislation. So what will be the punishment or the penalty? They would be ending up in 10 years of imprisonment for the conversion. In cases of conversion of members of scheduled castes or scheduled tribes and minors, a provision has also been made for the imprisonment of 2 to 10 years with a minimum fine of about 50,000 as well. Then we also have, in case of mass conversions of 2 or more persons, a provision of 5 to 10 years of imprisonment with a minimum fine of 1 lakh has also been made under this particular proposed legislation. In case there is a person who is converted, forced, coerced, or by undue influence, who can raise this particular issue? It can be raised by parents, legal guardians, custodian, or brothers and sisters of the converted person can lodge a complaint with respect to this particular issue. So kindly remember, when this particular person who happens to convert by using all these means, if he is arrested, this will basically mean it will be a cognizable and a non-bailable offense. So the police officers need not have to take the permission from the magistrates but can directly arrest this particular person, which happens to be a cognizable as well as non-bailable offense as well. If there are people who want to convert voluntarily, they have seen that they have experienced or they have felt something good about a different religion, such person can convert on his own will. If he is converting on his own will, then he has to take the prior permission from the district administration 60 days in advance. In case there are religious leaders from a different community want to convert people, again they will also have to inform the district administration 60 days in advance as well. These are some of the important features that which are discussed under this legislation. We will be having more editorials and columns going forward. Once we have them, we will take it up once again. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Libya humanitarian crisis, political and military instability. Before we understand what this article is all about, we have to look at history or the background with respect to Libya. What exactly is happening in Libya? Libya was under foreign rule for centuries. It gained its independence in the year 1951, and after it gained its independence in the year 1951, what was something good about Libya was they discovered oil in Libya. So they became prosperous, and once they became prosperous, there were people who were wanting to take control of the government or in fact the governance in that particular country. This is where we have Colonel Gaddafi, who seized the power in the year 1969. So he was able to dominate the whole region, the environment, and he became one of the richest persons during his governance period in Libya. This is when there was lot of anguish against the person. This was a time where there was Arab Spring as well. People were not happy. There was lot of unemployment crisis. People were not happy with this regime as well. This was also backed by the Western government, where they happened to topple his government in the year 2011. This is when this led to political vacuum. What is this political vacuum? There is one person who is ruling a particular country for a longer period of time. He would have every institution under his control. Now, if this particular person is eliminated or completely taken away from this particular point, what you have is a political instability. Why political instability? Because there is no person who is governing the country in the present scenario. This is what happened in Iraq as well. This is what is happening in Libya as well. So because Gaddafi was immediately removed, what we have is the political vacuum in Libya. So whenever there is a political vacuum, what you will have is multiple powers immediately rising up. Who are these multiple powers? Let's say, for example, in the country of Libya, we have Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj, who happens to be the head of the internationally recognized government in Tripoli. And we have an other power, Khalifa Haftar, who happens to be the leader of Libyan National Army, which controls much of eastern. So what we have, there is political vacuum, and once there is political vacuum, you have two powers emanating in the country of Libya. So these two powers had their own control in Libya as well. What are those control? One by Fayez Sarraj, who happens to control Tripoli and the regions around it. Then we also have Khalifa Haftar, who happened to control the eastern part of Libya. This eastern part of Libya also had the major oil producing regions of the Libya as well. So what is happening here? There is conflict of power, where one side, that is the western side, is controlled by Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj. On the eastern side, we also have the Khalifa Haftar, leader of the Libyan National Army, who's controlling the major oil pockets as well as the eastern side. Then we have other militias who were controlling the southern part of Libya. Then there are contested areas. Then we have the tanker terminals as shown in the picture, where most of these tanker terminals were controlled by the Libyan National Army. And finally, we also have the oil refineries which are controlled again by the Liberation National Army. This is why we have to understand whenever there is a political vacuum, this will give rise to multiple power centers, and when there is rise of multiple power centers, you will have some other country playing its part in Libya as well. So which are the countries which are also involved? What we have is United States of America, United Nations, Turkey, Qatar and Italy, who are supporting the government formed by Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj. Then we also have Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Russia, Saudi Arabia and France, who are supporting Khalifa Haftar, the leader of the Liberation National Army. Now the question is, what do the different countries want? We have taken into picture three important countries. One is Italy, the second is France, and third is Turkey. Why have we taken all these countries? That is because of the role they play when it comes to Libya and its political instability. When we are looking at Italy, this happens to be the former colonial power in Libya. It sees stabilizing the country of Libya is very important for Italy on the basis of three important fronts. What are these three important fronts? One is the national security, second is the oil reserves, and third is the migration. The first important factor is the national security. We will try and understand the implications of national security to Italy when we have a larger ramifications with respect to Libya. The second important factor is the oil reserves. In case they happen to support Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj, he would be able to export the oil reserves to Italy. Kindly remember, Italy happens to be a close door neighbor when it comes to Libya. Then we also have migration as well. In case there is a political turmoil, there is humanitarian crisis, what will happen? The economics will not go well, people would bound to be suffering, and as a result there is large scale unemployment in this particular region, resulting in what is called as the migration crisis. When it results in migration crisis, because of the cultural conflict of Africa and the European cultures, there would be animosity that could brew in Italy as well. If there are more number of migrants in Italy during that particular period, this will also means it will also have spillover effects because of the open borders in the European Union as well. So the larger picture, one, they want the oil reserves, and at the same time to prevent migration from Libya to Italy, which will also have impact on the European Union. That is why Italy is focusing on this particular political instability. The second country we have to focus is on France. France is supporting the government of Khalifa Haftar. Why is it they supporting Khalifa Haftar? That is because France as a country is facing a lot of issues because of the extremism, and Khalifa Haftar is one of the leader who is supposed to have clamped down the extremists in that particular region of Libya, and as a result France has supported Khalifa Haftar indirectly. And the second major reason as to why they are also supporting is because he holds control on the eastern part of Libya. Since he controls the eastern part of Libya, which has lot of oil refineries, oil reserves from this country of Libya can be easily exported to France. And as a result, France is supporting Khalifa Haftar, who happens to be the leader of Libyan National Army. The third major country we have to focus on is Turkey. Why Turkey? Because Turkey has a lot of activities when it comes to the Mediterranean Sea. And recently, we have the Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj, who has entered into a contentious agreement with the Turkey government, where Turkey claims some parts of the eastern Mediterranean, where this Mediterranean part has a lot of gas reserves as well. So Turkey has a close cooperation with one of the governments in Libya, and that happens to be led by Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj. And now what we have is the conflict with the other government, where the other government led by Khalifa Haftar has said that all the forces of Turkey which are present in Libya has to be thrown out, says Khalifa Haftar, leader of the Libyan National Army. That is the context of this article. Now what we have to discuss is the larger ramifications. What are these larger ramifications? As we initially discussed, in case there is a political stability, this will give rise to humanitarian crisis. People would not want to live in that particular country, and as a result what we will have is spillover on the major African countries like Algeria, Niger, Chad, Sudan, and Egypt as well. People from these countries will start migrating to all the close by African countries. This will unfold the political instability and it will also give rise to migration crisis in all these countries. Apart from that, we also have to look at Europe as well. When they enter the doors of Italy, because Europe also has open borders, this will also impact Europe as well. This is where the European Union also was supporting the Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj, which happens to be the recognized government of the United Nations. But here is a major conflict. There are countries like Italy and the European Union who are supporting the recognized government of Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj. But we have France, which happens to be a major power in Europe, which is supporting the conflicting and opposite party. And as a result, these parties are not able to come into picture. They're not able to pacify. This is giving rise to conflict within the fold of the European Union. The next major factor is whenever there is political turbidity or there is political turmoil in a particular region, since there are conflicting parties fighting for it, this will give rise to violent extremist organization. This can also give rise to terrorist organization as well, and as a result this can be a threat to the national security of Italy as well as European as well. So what is happening here? Because national security of Italy has to be safeguarded, that is why they are supporting the Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj. Also remember, whenever there is a political turmoil, this will also give rise to illicit marketplace. Why? Because there are conflicting parties. This may also give rise to arms race in this particular region and illegal arms trade as well. When there is illegal arms trade, there will be extortion, there will be drug racket, and ultimately violation of the human rights. Finally, the economies of the neighboring state will also go down because of the large scale migration crisis. With this, what we understand is Libya is in deep insecurity and instability. There is no effective central government. Domestic actors are fighting amongst themselves. There are different countless armed actors as well, including the extremist group as we just discussed, making the ground situation very dangerous and precarious and highly complex in the present scenario. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India and its neighbors. This article here is speaking about India's relationship with its neighbors during the COVID-19 crisis. It also delves into India's supporting role, border skirmishes, China's aggressive push to attract countries, and India's change in policy to allow its close partners to play a significant influence in its immediate neighborhood. When we speak about COVID-19, COVID-19 originated in China. As we are in a globalized world, what started in China spread to different parts of the country. The COVID-19 has hit the world so badly that the world community is facing the brunt of economic crisis as well as the health crisis. India currently ranks second when it comes to the number of people who are impacted. The first country which has most number of cases is United States of America, followed by it is India. India, as a responsible country, which is a major power in South Asia, also had to take responsibility. Why? Because it has resources, it has institutions, and it is one of the significant powers when it comes to South Asia. So, what does India do? India, in order to promote goodwill and also stability in South Asia, as a leading producer of pharmaceutical drugs and vaccines, India has promoted Bonhami in the southern Asian countries. So India, as a result of this particular issue, has taken up upon itself to basically introduce about 20 million funding for relief for the SAARC countries. Basically, we have the Prime Minister of India who had a special virtual summit of 8 SAARC nations and proposed what is called as the COVID package. This COVID package is where the government of India gave around $20 million funding for the relief. And at the same time, we have the India's military, which also ran a series of missions to the SAARC countries. India also provided food and medicines to the Indian Ocean region as well. India was also able to bring back its people with what is called as the Vande Bharat mission. In case there are Indian citizens who are currently present in any other country who are not able to come back because of the lockdown issues, but they wanted to come back to India very badly because of lack of resources in some other country, they had to be brought down by India's Vande Bharat mission. So these were some of the steps taken by India with its immediate neighborhood as well as for its citizens. While all this was happening, India was not the only country in the region providing help. We also have China as well. China has a huge monetary advantage. So China was also engaging with its neighbors in South Asia as well. What was China doing with different groups of SARC? Let's say, for example, we have Pakistan, Afghanistan and Nepal on one side, and Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka on other side. All these countries were promised vaccine whenever China develops. In fact, it had also provided the PPE kits, debt waivers to Maldives and Sri Lanka, and it had also provided other important medical equipments to all these countries as well. In fact, it has also extended about $1.4 billion line of credit to Pakistan. So while India was trying to influence its immediate neighborhood, we have China, which has a huge monetary advantage, which was also trying to attract all these South Asian countries towards its fold. While every country was being attracted, India and Bhutan, who were not part of the One Belt One Road initiative, were out of this particular loop. While all this was happening, on one side, trying to help the humanity overcome the crisis of COVID 19, there was aggressive China as well. Taking the advantage of COVID 19, it wanted to expand its territorial outreach. So, what we have is the line of actual control issue with India, where 20 Indian soldiers were killed by the Chinese. China also made an accelerated claim to Bhutan's Sangteng National Reserves as well, and China also supported Nepal indirectly. While we were constructing road in the Indian constituency in the Indian borders, Nepal was changing the borders of its own political map as well. It brought about amendments when it comes to the constitution and even claimed a part of Indian territory. All this was with the support of China, is what is being said by the political strategists. And while all this was happening, new defense pact between China and Pakistan also took place. What we have is the increasing cases of military challenges along the line of control, and there were ceasefire violations along the line of control with Pakistan to the highest levels since 2003 as well. So what did Prime Minister Narendra Modi do? He spoke to his counterpart in Bangladesh. India had to complete its railway lines with Bangladesh and Nepal, ferry services to Maldives, and identify other services to Sri Lanka and the Indian Ocean islands as well. Some of the debt waivers made by neighbors were also accepted by India. While China was trying to appease its own set of countries, India was also equally ready to take upon the challenge that which was put across by China. Another important factor is change in the foreign policy when it comes to the close partners. Why is this change in the foreign policy? That is because of the rise of China, that is to cut down the influence of China in the region of Indian Ocean. As a result, we have the United States of America, which was indirectly supported by India, says this article. So United States of America had a military dialogue with the Maldives, and India has supported this call only to cut down the influence of China. And at the same time, there has been America's Millennium Challenge Corporation's projects where in Afghanistan, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Nepal and Bangladesh, this was also supported indirectly by India. And finally, India has also supported the Quad partners like the US, Japan and Australia within the fold of Indian Ocean region as well. Apart from these encouraging signs with the close partners, we also have close cooperation on the security as well as on the infrastructure initiatives in the immediate neighborhood with UK, France as well as Germany. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the Jal Jeevan Mission. The Jal Jeevan Mission is one of the significant programs of the Government of India to provide safe and adequate drinking water by the year 2024 to all the households in rural India. And this program also has the implementation strategy of sustainability as well. So it is not only about providing drinking water to the rural India by 2024, but it also wants some of the elements taken into picture. One is recharge of the groundwater. Second is about water conservation. The third is effective use of rainwater harvesting. So while we provide water to the rural India, we also have to look at the conservation effects. That happens to be the primary objectives of the ambitious flagship scheme of the Jal Jeevan Mission. In order to understand what this article, in order to understand what this mission is all about, an elaborate analysis has been taken up in one of our videos. A link for the same will also be provided in the description box, so kindly look into it. But what are we looking under this article? Here we would be looking at challenges with respect to the implementation of the Jal Jeevan Mission. What are the major challenges? One is with respect to the finances. When it comes to the government of India and its sharing with the state governments as well, the major problem is with respect to the finances. The government of India has already approved certain amount, but will this amount be executed, implemented with time, is what we have to wait and watch. So the first major challenge is with respect to the finances, though it has been approved, but with COVID-19 in picture and the fiscal policies and the fiscal health not right, what we have is the financial issue for the execution of this particular program. The second major issue is with respect to the water quality. Let's say, for example, it is not only about providing safe and adequate drinking water, which is the objective, but it is also putting it into reality as well. Let's say, for example, there are a couple of states in India and regions in India where there has been dental enamel damage, skeletal deformities. Why? Because of excessive intake of fluoride as well. That is where we are supposed to not only give them safe drinking water, but also protect the source of water that has to be supplied to the households as well. So the water quality, that which is given to the people, will have to be maintained, is the second challenge. The third is with respect to the quantity. What is the amount of water that which is given to a household? According to statistics, it currently goes on to say that 55 liters per capita per day is required for a human quantity. But there is competition from the irrigation, which is required for the agriculture. Then there is competition from the industry sector as well. So when there is drought, will the government be able to provide the required amount for the human activity, is the third major challenge. So the three major challenges: one is the finance, second is the water quality, and third is the water quantity. So these are the major challenges when it comes to the implementation of the Jal Jeevan Mission. In the present context, the article goes on to say that 32.3% of the households, which includes about 6.15 crore households, have been provided with the drinking water, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. But for the entire analysis, the link will be given in the description box, so kindly look into it. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, understanding the new COVID-19 variant has been explained in one of our videos in the last week's CNA, so kindly look into it. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. With reference to National Assessment and Accreditation Council, which of the following statements is or correct? It is an organization that assesses and accredits higher education institutions in India. This is right. It is an autonomous body funded by the Department of Science and Technology and headquartered in Bangalore. This statement is wrong. Why? That is because this is an autonomous body funded not by the Department of Science and Technology, but instead it is funded by the University Grants Commission. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, this is an organization that assesses and accredits higher education institutions in India. It is an autonomous body funded by University Grants Commission. This is an outcome of the recommendations of the National Policy in Education, which laid special emphasis on upholding the quality of higher education in India. Also remember, it is headquartered in Bangalore. Now let's look into the next practice question. Portulaca laliji, recently seen in news. Is it a new species of sunrose from Eastern Ghats, a new species of non-venomous endemic snake from the Northern Western Ghats, a neopasserine bird, In the bee eater family, Merpode, a high potent medical plant endemic to the Agastya Hills. The answer to this is Potulica lalaji is a new species of sunrose from the Eastern Ghats. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, it is a new species of sunrose from the Eastern Ghats in India, where it was discovered in Prakasam district of Andhra Pradesh, and this has been named to honor the contribution of Lalji Singh, an eminent botanist of the Botanical Survey of India, associated with its Andaman and Nicobar Center. Now let's look into the next practice question. Operation Barkhane was in the news. What is this operation? It was a military operation by USA to expel occupying Iraqi forces from Kuwait. This is wrong. It was an Israeli strike to eliminate Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. This is wrong. American role in international military operation in Libya to enforce United Nations Security Council resolution. This is wrong. The answer to this is it is an anti-insurgent operation led by the French military against radical group in Africa's Sahel region. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference to the Barkhane force. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statement. Asians such as turmeric and fruits like the banana had reached the Mediterranean more than 300 years ago. The Bronze Age is the third principal period of the three-age system. Which of the above statements is or correct? The answer to this is one only. Why? Because the Bronze Age is not the third principal period, but instead it is the second principal period. So what are the three periods? One is the Stone Age, then followed by the Bronze Age, and finally what we have is the Iron Age. The first statement is correct. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the advantages of nano missiles? Small size, structural stability, less toxicity, ability to entrap large amounts of hydrophobic drugs, contrast agents, and solubilize in water. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So the first important factor is we have to understand what is this nano missiles. So basically these are the extremely small structures that have been noted as an emerging platform in targeted therapy. So these are the global like structures with a hydrophilic outer shell and a hydrophobic interior. This dual property makes them a perfect carrier for delivering drug molecules. What is the importance of nano missiles? Basically, in case there is a drug that is administered, let's say for example in the present scenario a cancer drug called as docetaxel, if it is being administered, it can have side effects in that particular region which can result in multiple issues, that which can harm the liver, it can harm the blood cells as well as lungs. But if it is administered through the nano missiles, in such a scenario there will be reduction of side effects in that particular area. That is what we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Among the following tiger reserves, which one has the largest area under critical tiger habitat? Is it Corbett, Ranthambore, Nagarjuna Sagar, Srisailam, or Sundarbans? The answer to this is Nagarjuna Sagar, Srisailam. Now let's look into the main practice question. Libya's humanitarian crisis and political military instability has an effect on the wider region as well as on Europe. Discuss. How has India helped tackle COVID-19 challenge in its immediate and extended neighborhood? Explain with relevant examples. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with some constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.